Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan guru-murthy, and this is the podcast in which we talk to extraordinary people about the big ideas in their lives and the events that have helped shape them. My guest this week is very famous and best known to us all as a dragon. She's a hugely successful businesswoman and entrepreneur. Deborah Meaden has got a fascinating life story, and I'm really delighted she's joining us on the podcast. Hello, Deborah.
Hello, you got away with calling me a dragon. How about that?
So look, I mean, how involved in the day-to-day running of the businesses you're involved in are you now? Because I don't understand how you have enough hours in the day.
Well, it's a good question. I actually don't. And I'm not involved in any business on a day-to-day hands-on basis. Neither should I be. When I'm investing in a business, I'm investing in people to run those businesses with guidance from me. And the amount of guidance depends entirely on where the business is really and what it needs. So everybody has my phone number. Everybody knows when to call me. And if they need my help, then I'm there. Or if I feel there's an issue coming up, if I think I can help in some way, and that's about having a good nose for it, then I will sort of spend a little bit more time with the business. But I can't, the worst thing you can do with a business is dip in and dip out. And as you rightly say, I don't actually have enough time to spend enough time with the businesses to actually get involved in the day-to-day running.
So when did you stop running businesses?
It was probably West Star Holidays. That was the sort of business love of my life. I mean, that was in the hospitality industry, and that was really hard work. I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I hadn't quite realized until I stopped doing it how much of my life it was taking over. So that will have been 2007. I stopped sort of, physically going into work every day.
So we're heading into what all the economic predictions suggest could be a very, very difficult year, at least. And many people are very worried, partly about household bills, partly about energy, but also about their jobs and all sorts of things like that. So how worried are you about the period we're entering?
Well, I am concerned because we don't really know how it's going to manifest itself. But we do know that it's going to be difficult. And the worry itself is worrying because worry changes people's behavior. All I say to my businesses is we need to make sure that we're speaking in the right language and we are actually offering good value. Whatever that value is, it doesn't always mean the cheapest. It just means that we are telling our customers why, we are a good person to partner with, and we're a good person to buy from because we understand and we are offering you good values.
And are there businesses that you're involved in or invested in where you think, well, that's just not going to survive an economic downturn, perhaps because it's luxury goods, or it's the thing that people will stop spending on in hard times?
It's a really good question. So I think COVID, for example, the only business that I had, I'm across 24 businesses at the moment, and the only business that is still there, but I worry about it the second time round, is an events business because, it's had the first shock because nobody was going to the events. And I worry that it's going to have its second shock now. But it is going to be difficult. And I think one thing that we all have to accept is that not only will profitability be down, but it almost should be, because business should be sharing in the pain. And we shouldn't be looking at next year and thinking, well, you know what, we need to maintain our profits, and that means prices are going to have to go up. I think businesses need to take responsibility and share. As I say, they've got to survive, so they've got to be able to cover their costs. They've got to make a little bit of profit if they want to reinvest into the future. But I do find it a little bit toe curling when I look at businesses who look immediately to their customer to pay for their rising costs, and those are the conversations that I have with my businesses.
You're pretty out there on social media, and you put your opinions out there. So how do you feel about the environment we are in? The people who are in charge of our economy, and that's not just the government, it's the institutions, it's the banks. Are we in good hands at the moment?
I don't know. I mean, I think we're a bit rudderless actually at this moment in time. I think the government is not really showing any leadership. I don't think there's any signs that a lot of the decisions that have been made more recently are actually flowing through to a stronger economy. I see no vision at all. I mean, we came out of the EU, and the only hope I had, I'm a famous anti-Brexiteer, so I wanted to stay within the EU, but we've got what we've got. All that I'd hoped is that there was a vision, just as an entrepreneur, tell me where we're going and I tell you I'll get on board. But there is a total lack of vision. And so many times I see a lot of our language falling back to tried and tested and the old ways. And it used to be like this. And I'm not just talking about government, I'm talking about businesses as well. But then on the flip side, and here's the optimism in me, I see a lot of sort of the newer, the younger businesses coming through, talking about how they can play their part in the economy and how they're going to run their businesses in a slightly different way. So there's this kind of the big old tankers finding it really, really difficult to navigate, but actually a lot of the younger businesses forming a new type of landscape. And that's the bit that gives me hope, because at the moment, I think business has a huge responsibility, because the government, we are rudderless. There is no conversation going on at all other than who's going to be the next leader.
And you do expect that? You do expect there to be a vision, do you, from government? I mean, how does, a vision from government affect business?
Well, once the government has a vision, it starts building a structure. Now, I'm actually very oddly Christian. I mean, most people think I'm very political. I'm actually not very political. I really don't want to know what goes on with our government. I don't really understand how it works. All I'm interested in is being provided with an environment that I can work within. That means structure and a consistency. So when I talk about a vision, if a government has a vision, then it starts, all of the framework around it starts moving towards that vision. It gives me the confidence that I understand where we're going, and therefore I can work within those structures. But if you have no vision, then you really can't have a strategy, because you really don't know where you're going, and you also don't believe, making decisions today. I think, well, actually, maybe in 3 months' time, they'll be completely overturned. I'll waste a load of money. I'll have wasted all of this resource and all of this time, and I would deliver the wrong thing. So I do think I want government to stay out of it. I just want government to offer me, they want to tell me where they're going, and I want the structure that I can understand, that I can work within.
And as you say, I mean, you were very outspoken about Brexit. How has Brexit affected your businesses?
Well, I mean, all of my businesses, again, survived Brexit, but my goodness, the amount of red tape and work and the barriers and the difficulty. And it drives me mad when people say, actually, that's not, it's a bit of Brexit, it's a bit of COVID, it's a bit of... I know what's Brexit. I know what was COVID. I can see it within the businesses. And we're fortunate, we have resource, and we pulled a lot of our resource to find a way around a lot of these difficulties. But it isn't my businesses that I really worry for. It isn't the huge organizations that have got a whole department, of sorting out, the changes that need to be brought about because of Brexit. It's the heartbreaking stories of businesses, often smaller businesses, not always, but that just can't function in the new environment, and have either had to move, they've had to leave this country that, they don't want to, it's the country they love, they want to contribute to, they've had to leave the country, or they failed.
Because, I mean, obviously a lot of people said, well, it was all Project Fear, and it turned out not to be as bad as you all said. I mean, has it turned out as bad?
I think it has. Yeah. I mean, listen, nobody likes "I told you so." So that is definitely a phrase that I try to avoid. But as it unfolds, and I look back, even on my social media feed, thinking, I said that. I said, this is, and the thing is, it wasn't even me being clever. It was me being bleeding obvious. It wasn't, I don't sit here and think, well, look at me, I'm some kind of sage. Look, it was kind of night was going to follow day. But
I mean, give me an example of the kinds of things that you think have happened that were warned about. Because there's been this narrative, hasn't there, sort of over the last, well, since 2016, that you all said it was all going to be terrible and we didn't fall off a cliff. I guess that's maybe because it didn't happen overnight. But 6 years down the road, you feel that we are where you said we would be.
I think so. And I also think we haven't seen the worst of it. We haven't actually, you're absolutely right. It didn't fall off a cliff. And that led people to believe that actually, it's not so bad, because yesterday we're in the EU, today we're not in the EU, and hey ho, hardly anything's happened. But these things do take time to sort of manifest themselves. I mean, certainly if you're trying to export now, It is a minefield. Talk about, throwing out all of the rules and regulations. But I genuinely don't even try to understand. And my big worry, and one of the reasons I do think it's going to get worse, is with ourselves, we're still not controlling our borders in terms of imports. They're still waving goods through. So that means that, well, goodness knows what's coming through. We're also having to do trade deals with countries that simply don't comply with our rules, whether that's animal welfare, whether it's health and safety, whether it's, food safety. So we're having to sort of dilute our own rules and regulations because we are desperate to do deals. And none of that feels better.
Let's go back to sort of how you became a success then. Tell me about your childhood.
So my mother was, for a long time, a single parent family, and she really had a really tough time. I don't say that about me because as a child, all you need to do is feel safe, and I felt safe. But she was working her socks off. We went to live with another family while she was working, and they were wonderful. So I had a lovely childhood there. But actually, from probably about the age of 10. We never had a holiday. My holidays were always working with my mother or being around where she was working. And I genuinely was properly working in school holidays, probably from about 12 or 13. But I don't say that with any, it's not like I slept in a rolled up newspaper on the motorway. It's for me, it was really quite exciting. I think it was where my love of business came from. I couldn't wait to get on and have my own business. But no, I had a lovely childhood. The only thing I really didn't enjoy was school. I really did not enjoy school.
Because you went to boarding school, didn't you?
Well, I went to lots of schools, actually. So, yeah, I went to boarding school. I went to grammar school. It was the last grammar stream going through. So I went to boarding school for a very short period of time, for 2 years. My sister managed to get herself expelled. And once I'd realized that was an option, I went for it. So my parents removed me before the school did. And I went to a grammar school. So I finished off my education at a grammar school. But even then, I couldn't wait to get out. I really couldn't wait to go.
I mean, because a lot of people wouldn't have the confidence necessarily to just go, well, that's what I want to do. I'm not going to bother about formal education and university and all those sorts of things. Did you have that confidence again because of the family or some other reason?
So I don't know where confidence comes from, but I have always been confident. I don't remember a time. I think that's one of my most helpful attributes even when I was very, very small. I knew what I wanted and I was going to get it. And it never dawned on me that I wouldn't. I just find a way around to do it. But I do wonder if my mother's difficult years when we were younger and seeing a demonstration of somebody who thought my life's tough, but I'm going to have to, it's up to me. I'm going to have to go and sort it. So I kind of had an example of somebody who had it really tough, who worked their way out of it. So I guess that would have probably left me feeling like, well, actually, I can, if I lost it all tomorrow, I'd do it all again.
And how much help did you get from your family? I mean, were they advising you? Did they invest in you? I mean,
no. So the first business that I was involved. Well, actually, that's not true. The big business, Westar Holidays, was actually my parents bought holiday parks. So it was their holiday parks that they said to me, do you want to come back into, or do you want to come into the family business? Because we're going to take on professional managers. And my sister and I both said, actually, yes, we are interested. So that was their business. But I did a management buyout in 1999 of it. And by the time I'd finished, we were sort of supplying holidays for about 150,000 people. So yes, absolutely. And that's definitely a huge advantage. I had a vehicle that I could really grow and really establish, and not everybody has that. But it could have gone wrong or it could have gone right, and it went right.
and how did you know what to do?
Well, I had experienced a lot of it. I mean, my first business was a failure. So I had quite a lot of experience. And also I'd watched I'd observed a lot and absorbed a lot from my parents when they were in, their businesses. So, I certainly absorbed stuff. And I don't know, I will say it myself, I've got a good nose for it. I don't know what it is, but I used to drive people mad. I'd walk onto a holiday park and it would be immaculate and everything would be looking fantastic. But my nose would take me to the place where something that wasn't working right. And it used to drive them mad. And I used to apologize profusely to the general managers. But the first question I would ask would be about the sewage treatment plants, and they say, oh, I can't believe you said that. The sewage treatment plant's not working, So it's, I know I've got a good nose for it.
And so what do you think of yourself as now? Are you an investor basically, or what?
I don't really think of it very often, Krishnan. I don't know. What am I? I don't know. I feel like I'm a human being. I just feel like I invest in businesses. I help businesses. We do try to pigeonhole people, and I think certainly in the early days of Dragon's Den, people had me absolutely down. They wish I was the hard-nosed businesswoman and that was it. I rail against that. I always think, we're always more than that. All of us are more than that. So I'm a human being.
And in Dragon's Den, were you playing a part, or are you playing a part?
I'm not an actress. I've never had media training. I sat down in that chair when I did the screen test. I sat down in the chair. I very quickly became oblivious of the cameras. I simply somebody was pitching to me and I was responding to it. And I think that the absolute magic of Dragon's Den is our money, and more to the point, it's our time. So it's very real. The money's actually the easy bit. It's the bit after. I've got to work with these people. We've got to make this business work. That is the magic of it. It is as real as you're going to get on television.
How many businesses have you actually invested in as a result?
I don't know, about 40, mid-40s, I should think. So I've offered in more, but they don't all go through. So once the offer is made, we go into due diligence, and that's where we find out whether or not it has been represented accurately in the den, or people have just made mistakes. If, a bit of a mistake doesn't matter, but something really fundamental, like I've got a patent, turns into I've got a patent application, then a deal will fall over. So I think I've offered in over 60 and probably completed around about mid-40s, I should think.
And what's your success rate?
Well, at the moment, very good. They haven't all exited. I've had probably 3 failures, and those failures will include me simply saying, you don't actually want to put into this business what it takes to really make this business work. So there's the shares back, because life is too short for 2 unhappy people. I'm not even sure I call that a failure. That's simply a recognition of the fact that, and those businesses are still going, it's a recognition of the fact that you just say, this isn't working. You're not happy. I'm not happy. There's been some share buybacks. And at the moment, I'm really pleased with my portfolio at the moment. It's definitely lent towards the greener side of things. They're all doing pretty well. And that either means they're profitable or they're on plan. They're not all making a profit. But some businesses, you simply say, look, it's going to take us 5 years to get to profit because we want to do all of these things in the right order.
Do you think Dragon's Den, has had a role in business beyond television entertainment?
I hope so. I think so. I think it's why I love being involved in it, because you now talk to people, their language has changed. For goodness sake, I get 10-year-olds come up to me who talk about EBITDA. For crying out loud, I don't think I learned that until I was 20. So I do think it's opened it up and it's popularized it. When I was at school, nobody even considered the option of me going into business or anybody else going into business. Now, really, the 7 or 8-year-olds are going, yeah, I want my own business. And I think Dragons has just unpeeled the lid. It's shown them that we're not a bunch of stuffy, grey suited, boring. It's a very creative thing to do.
So you mentioned the environment a couple of times. When did you start deciding that that's where you wanted to focus your energy?
When I went to Brighton College, my thesis was actually on climate change. So I would have been 16, 17 then. And when I was in Dragon's Den, and this is the absolute truth, when I was in Dragon's Den, I used to always be the one who's saying, what about the impact on the planet and whatever? And they used to call me Swampy. They don't anymore, because they now understand, of course, the whole world's moved that way. And it's the right thing to do. So, but yeah, they used to call me Swampy.
So what does that mean for your businesses then? How do you green your businesses?
They're all work in progress, because the truth of the matter is, if you produce anything, you have an impact on the planet. And all I do is make sure that it's absolutely on the agenda. And what I ask of my businesses is that we understand what I actually ask of the government. I want to understand what's our plan. Where are we going to go? I want to understand how we're going to do it. And I want a map telling me where we are on that journey. But for me, the most important thing is, do you just talk about it? It just gets into the DNA. The day that I don't have to have it as a separate section in a board meeting, the day it's embedded in every single thought process and every single thing we do. Some of my business is there, actually. That's when it's utopia. That's when I can stop worrying about it and start thinking, actually, it's got a life of its own now.
Now, what about going into this period of possible recession? Are planetary impacts considerations a luxury? Are they things that cost and therefore will be dropped in a lot of businesses?
Absolutely. And that is one of the things that I talk about in saying, well, actually, what is more important? The impact. The issue is, if we don't sort this, everything's going to be more expensive. And as human beings, we're amazing. If we put our mind to stuff, we can really do stuff. But the one thing that so disappoints me is that when we can see stuff coming and we understand the implications of that, but it hurts us a little bit today, then we override our greater understanding and we say, yeah, but I want the air conditioning on. And what we need to do is change our mindset. We need to embrace new technologies. Green things shouldn't be more expensive, but they are, because the market's smaller. But you don't get a bigger market unless people buy into that market. So I think those who can afford it should certainly spend their money wisely in terms of what is the planetary impact. Some people can't afford to do that, and I totally get that, and they absolutely shouldn't feel guilty about it. But there are people who can afford to do that, and they should use their money wisely, because nothing changes the world like money.
So you shouldn't feel guilty. So if it's a question of your business, perhaps not surviving because that makes it too easy, but if it's the difference between a little profit and a little bit more profit in a world in which you're not making a lot of money, do you think it's okay to sacrifice the environmental consideration for a while?
No, I don't. I think we need to learn, and this is ways to change the world. We need to learn to stop consuming as much as we do. We need to learn how businesses can stand still without getting stale. It's a very lazy way to keep your business, to measure your business on growth, because listen, I'm not a genius, but I do understand that if you keep consuming on a planet, eventually we consume everything. That's just maths. That is going to happen. And businesses just use this. Next year we do better than last year. Next year we talk about it in terms of cash. And I say we need to redefine profit. We need to redefine our values in a business. We need to decide what, at the end of this year, what do we want to look like? We obviously need to make money, because otherwise we can't invest. We'll cease to exist. We can't create jobs, all of those things. So you obviously need to make money. But what are the other things that are important to us? And we need to measure against all of those individual bits to decide whether or not we're happy. And if we make a load of money and we do a load of damage, we shouldn't be pleased with ourselves.
Do you have a luxurious position from which to say that, though, in that you are financially secure and you've made your money? People listening to that might go, well, easy for her to say.
Yes, it is. And one of the banes of being successful is that people levy that at you all of the time. And I say it doesn't stop me having the right to worry and to care, because I'm also less likely to be affected. So I will actually be able to buy my way out of some of the misery that will be wrought amongst us. I'm not concerned for me. I'm concerned for the people who are going to be most hit, because I want to live in a safe, healthy, happy society. On a selfish level, I want to live on that. And on a human level, I want to live on that, because I don't want other people unnecessarily suffering. So my answer to that is, yeah, you're absolutely right. I can say that. But why would I even bother to say that if I didn't care about you?
And by the same token, again, as we go into a period in which the people at the bottom are the ones who are going to be really suffering, I mean, does it make you rethink your approach to, to business and to what's sustainable, what is a social enterprise, and whether that's more desirable?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I was looking, the recent bill the environmental bill that's passed through in the States. The thing I really loved about that is that there's a lot of that funding is going towards supporting the very people that we're talking about. And if there is a government role to play at all, it's actually enabling those people who can't afford to make the decisions that I can, and frankly, millions of other people can afford to make in terms of impact on the planet, actually supporting them through that, because they can't afford to make the changes should not be a reason for all of us just to say, well, in that case, we'll all just give up, won't we? So but they do need some kind of financial support, and business has a role to play in that as well. I talked way back at the beginning about being good value, and we should offer good value. We should also not just be focused. It goes back to this. We can't just be focused on cash output.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, you are talking about sort of tweaking the definitions of business and of capitalism, I suppose. I just wonder how far down that road you're prepared to go or to think. Is a business that is a non-profit that employs 100 people, is that a worthwhile thing that you should seek to do?
Well, it could well be. I mean, I would take it on a case by case. I certainly invest in businesses that are producing profit at the moment. But if a social enterprise was dealing with all of the issues that we were talking about, then absolutely, I would invest in a social enterprise, because my output, and I am in that luxurious position, my output is able to say, well, actually, I just want to make the world better. I just want the environment to be more protected. But I do also recognize that that is because of my position.
Yes, because I mean, again, you could also sort of look at things like outsourcing or manufacturing in China or Indonesia or India or faraway countries, basically, in which there's a carbon footprint to get the goods back, and also a sort of a human cost in terms of who's being exploited out there. But are these sorts of considerations imperatives now or luxuries?
Well, they are, but we're still in the learning phase. It's really, so I do a podcast called The Big Green Money Show. That wasn't an advert for The Big Green Money Show, by the way. And I'm learning so much. So things like outsourcing to China can be a lot less impactful in terms of the environment than actually making things here, or bringing in produce from overseas. Actually, the travel is always a tiny portion of the footprint. It's usually, if we were going to try and grow avocados in the UK, it would be incredibly impactful on the environment, the water, the heating, all of those things. So actually, to do that, we have to know a lot to make the right decisions. And that's another thing. I do think education should pick up on environmental impact so that we can start making more rounded decisions instead of thinking plastic bad. Actually, not all plastic's bad. In fact, plastic's amazing. We just need to produce less of it. So we need to mature a little bit in that. And I'm saying we, because I am maturing every time, I have a conversation with somebody about it.
Yeah, I mean, the big one, and I know you've touched on it on the podcast as well, is, I suppose, getting people's fuel bills down at the moment, isn't it? And there's an awful lot people can do that we're just not really told about very much, because no one's really doing it.
No, I mean, think about it breaks my heart at the moment. I can't imagine how worried I would be facing, I think the average household fuel bill this this year, because of the price rise, is going to be £4,200. It breaks I can't imagine what people are feeling like looking at that, and I get a bit annoyed that we've lost an opportunity in terms of insulation, in terms of renewables, in terms of the way we build our houses, because our houses we're still building houses that are not fit for purpose in terms of the climate. We know what's coming, but we're still building the wrong houses.
And we dropped the obligations that were in place some years ago that would have created, I don't know, about 1 million carbon zero homes by now.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just not, and we're not taking it seriously. We're using all of the words and we're not taking it seriously, but it is real people's lives. It impacts on actual people's lives. It's not this theoretical, 1 million houses. That's people living in those homes that now wouldn't be worried about their fuel bills.
So do you think of your sort of your life at all in sort of, as sort of having phases, that there will be another phase to your life in which you might do something different?
No, I don't think. I've never been a planner. I don't really think about my life. I've consistently been passionate about the environment, but it has become an urgent passion. I've seen myself sort of funneling into that more and more. And that covers so many things. It isn't just net zero, it's biodiversity, it's the way we farm, it's the way we look after our land, it's our peat bogs, it's it's all of those things. So I'm definitely moving towards that. But
So it's not that you want to grab the levers of power or sort of, and sort things out. It's just that this is something you care about.
No, it's not true, actually. I do want to sort things out. I do think we're at the phase at the moment that we don't want to be told what to do in terms of climate change. There's still that pushback. And to me, the most important thing is hearts and minds. We're in the hearts and minds phase. And that's what I'm doing at the moment, because, climate is one of those things that people can get a bit like, oh, it's too big. It's too big. It's too big. I'm just going to get on with my life.
And how good are you at walking the walk in your own life? Have you converted your own home and changed the way you travel and all those sorts of things?
I don't think I would have a right to talk about people changing their businesses or their lives if I don't do it myself. So again, things that I'm fortunate to do that other people can't necessarily do. We generate more energy than we actually use because we've got a big solar array. We don't use any sprays, so the whole place is completely organic. We have water capture. When we talked about business, we talked about the day it's embedded in a business is my day of utopia, but it's definitely embedded into our lives. We have a plastic box of shame that says we couldn't find anything that was plastic free. We needed this thing. We couldn't find anything that was plastic free. We put it in that. We look, we kick ourselves each week so that we measure actually what we're doing. I haven't taken a long haul floor hike for 4 years. I said to Paul, I will do no more than, certainly at the moment, no more than one long haul flight a year. And I'm desperately trying not to do domestic. I use the train all of the time. I don't use drivers, don't use helicopters. I use the train when I possibly can. And I'm desperately trying not to do domestic travel at all. I'm going to have to fly to Edinburgh and I'm kicking myself.
If you could change the world in any way, then how would you change it? Wave a magic wand.
I've got a magic wand. I thought you were going to ask me for something practical. If I had a magic wand, it's a value shift. I don't want to change the world. I'd like to change the way people view the world and view each other. So it's a value shift. It's moving into how do we live a good, a comfortable and a sustainable life, and how do we value the things that are actually life-giving and life-improving without basing everything on money. And I know that sounds very, very strange coming from a dragon.
Deborah Meaden, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.